In this video, we're going to touch on the logging in OspreyHost version 11.7. It does differ from the logging in OspreyHost 11.4 and prior versions. Our first step is we're going to navigate out to the OspreyHost folder via Windows Explorer. We're going to note that there's both a log and a logs folder. The log folder itself is used by the installer for OspreyHost. You'll notice there's currently two files in here. We have an install host 11.7.100.002 and an update host 11.7.100.002. This first log was generated by the full install, which did happen to be the 11.7.100.002 release. Whatever version of the full installer you run, you will see this log. The second log was generated when we ran a maintenance pack. In the example of this video, the maintenance pack was the same version as the full install, so you saw an update host with the same version. If we were to subsequently run 11.7.100.005, for example, you would see a separate file, update host 11.7.100.005. There will be a file here for each maintenance pack version that you run. Now, if you happen to run the same maintenance pack versions multiple times, the existing file will simply be appended to. Now let's take a look at what's inside these two logs. The install host log, you'll see, and this is the same for both types of logging, both the maintenance pack and the full install. You'll see a log type, so in this case the begin, info, and end, a begin, and so on. You'll see a version, in this case 11.7.100.002. You'll see a date, you'll see a time, and then you'll see the information that's logged. There is various information logged. This will be added to over time as we decide other things may or may not need to be logged. Right now it's a basic troubleshooting that we use during development of the new installer. Now if we go to the maintenance pack log and open that up, you'll see there's significantly less information in this one currently. It's the same layout. The reason there's less information is A, we're doing less in the maintenance pack than we are in the full installer, and B, there was less troubleshooting required. As time goes by, again, more information will be added to this, but in general, we normally don't see errors during full installer maintenance packs, so there's not a lot to log here. However, if you do have an issue, then this is where we would look. The second type of logging we want to touch on is the actual OspreyHost logging. That's located in the logs folder. And as you can see, currently we have two files here. We have a MinerDB upgrade log file, which was created when the MinerDB upgrade was ran, with the date, which happens to be January 3rd, 2019. And then we have an actual application log, OspreyHost, again with the date, January 3rd, 2019. If we open these up, you'll see the layout is similar to the traditional OspreyHost logging. Again, we have date and time, we have the process and thread, we have the type of logging, and so on. Then this is the actual file that we were logging on, in this case osprey.host.massagedata.util, and then the routine, which is upgrade.db. If you scroll over to see some of the rest of this, you'll see what our custom logging trees are set to. We will touch on that in a separate video. Further over, we have the actual logging information, such as the begin of the file, our application version, our DB version, which as you can see they're different because the upgrade DB had not been ran yet. If this were to be ran again, then the versions would be the same and we wouldn't actually run the file. If we go into the OspreyHost log, again, you'll see the traditional information, date, time, process, thread, and so on. Then we have our log manager, if we have any custom entries set, things such as our pro path, various information about our framework and different libraries in use, globals loading, parameters loading, different debug information, and so on down. These files will be created here and controlled by the settings in our application JSON file, which is the next thing we want to touch on. Our application settings.json file replaces settings that used to be in the OspreyHost.ini. It's located in the same spot in our OspreyHost folder, and it is just a text file in a JSON format. So we can open it up with any text editor we would like. In this case, we'll just use regular old Notepad. So let's open it up, and you'll see that it is just a text file. The JSON spec, we have an open brace and then a close brace, and then each of our entries are quoted with a colon and then quoted values. Every entry but the last one has a comma at the end of the line. So for example, our custom log entries are ORS debug and ORS error with levels of 4. Depending on production status and our troubleshooting going on, Osprey Tech Support may advise you to add or remove entries from this line or change settings. Log entry types allows us to filter out what data actually gets reported to the logs. Then the rest of the settings are the traditional settings from the Osprey POS INI that have been migrated over. Again, to change these, we would simply change the false to true, or if it were true, we wanted it false to false. In the case of numeric, such as trace level, we could change this to a 1 or a 2 or a 0. Email delay seconds, same thing, we would set a value in there. Debug mode. The one entry that is new is the DBs. This is where the database connections are actually defined instead of our older host.pf and hislog.pf files. We do have 3 databases now, the first being the host and the second being the hislog, as is always, which we simply have the path to each database and then -h setting separated by a comma. We also have a third database which is part of our framework, that's the SmartDB, and it's pathed out the exact same way. On the server, these should always be set to a host setting of localhost, and that's all that's required. So we'll close that file. While we're in here, a couple of other things to note. As we briefly talked about a second ago, we do have a third set of databases, our SmartDBs. So if you're doing automated backups, as Osprey would recommend, you should also back up the SmartDB in addition to the host and hislog. There is also this MinerDB upgrade batch file. This is what actually runs the MinerDB upgrade. If, as some resellers have chosen to do, you're scripting maintenance packs via third-party utility, this would be the file you'd want to call. And lastly, we do still have an OspreyHost ini file, which is used for certain things. However, again, the settings that used to be at the bottom, controlling things such as the send batch, create IM message, and so on, those have been migrated to the application.json file. So if you need to change those, please edit the application settings.json file and not the OspreyHost ini file. Thank you.